Storm Duck enters the transfer portal. It's fine. Penn State's secondary will be just okay, but the interior defensive line, that's going to be an issue if Penn State doesn't get some help.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Zach Seyko, your host, and joining me on the show is Matt Bortner, a former colleague of mine at ESPN Radio State College, now sports reporter with Lightner Communications in Altoona. Matt, it's great to see you again and great to have you back on the podcast, on the show.
Yeah, great to be back with you, buddy. It's not too long ago we were doing this every Monday, so excited to talk some Penn State with you again, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, we did Blue and White Breakdown for ESPN Radio State College when that was still in existence. And then, things happen year to year, right? But now this, Locked On Nittany Lions ain't going anywhere. And I'm glad to have you back alongside me here, just talking big picture stuff for Penn State, off-season goals, all the different news in the transfer portal, the latest with recruiting, NFL draft. So it's kind of everything bunched up together, all into one show here, Matt. Back to the spring game, the blue-white game. It's more so the immediate reaction as far as the post game goes. Storm Duck hops out of the puddle and into the transfer portal again, right? Storm Rubber Duck, if you will. And
flying once again.
Yeah, and Jimmy Christ, another one. Then Devin Ford puts his name in, even though he wasn't on the roster anymore. But I think did any of those moves, I don't think Devin Ford so much, but a Storm Duck in particular, and then you do lose a key depth piece at offensive tackle for Jimmy Christ. I don't think people valued him enough, but he was going to get some playing time had he stuck around. So what is your overall impression from Duck and Chris jumping into the portal like that right after the spring game?
Well, initially the Storm Duck news was, I think, a bit shocking. And then when I sort of, looked at the roster as a whole and maybe how things played out through the spring, maybe it's a bit understandable why Storm Duck decided to go elsewhere. Obviously, I think if he stays, he's going to be a piece that plays quite a bit for Penn State this year. But also, I think he probably looked at the competition overall and maybe looked at where he stands right now. And you look at the depth at cornerback for Penn State. Obviously, Kalen King is not going to be supplanted. He's an All-American type cornerback. And then Johnny Dixon coming back, who just got leaps and bounds better than last year and was excellent. You got Daquan Hardy coming back at the nickel position. You got Cam Miller, who, they've really been high on. So maybe is this a spot where Storm Duck says, I'm not the guy here. And he can be the guy at a lot of different places. So maybe it's not as shocking as a move as some people may initially think. And that's sort of what I initially thought was, wow, really?
Yeah, it feels like he wasted a bunch of time. I wonder what those conversations were like, because us as the media with the 1,000-foot view, right? We're not able to hear. I mean, some people do get the inside scoop from James Franklin, right? I don't think you and I are one of them, but the direct source. But when we analyze this, I think just in general for Penn State sports fans and media, we said, okay, Storm Duck is coming in to be cornerback number 2. So if in his mind that he was thinking, well, I'm going to be the next Joey Porter Jr. No, it was going to be Kalen King. It was always going to be Kalen King. I don't know why you would have came in with that mindset, that expectation. Like, kudos to you. I'm totally for unshakable confidence, but I feel like Penn State had to have had a realistic conversation with the guy that you're going to be essentially that co-starter, like Johnny Dixon was just a year ago, where he was in a rotation with Kalen King because it was Joey Porter Jr. He's not coming off the field unless, he needs a rest. He needs a breather. He was obviously hurt. He had the appendectomy.
Yeah.
And then Kalen King moved over to that role. And then Johnny Dixon moved to quarterback too, because in this system, when it comes to the secondary, right, with Terry Smith and Anthony Poindexter, these guys cycle in and out and rotate all the time. So even if Storm Duck was going to be the third guy, he was still going to be a starter based on the reps he was going to get game to game. So it just doesn't make any sense to me if he was really that baffled that he wasn't a guaranteed starter. I feel like some memo was missed.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because, even if you take Joey Porter out of the equation, people looked at this Penn State secondary, and not just at cornerback. You look at their safeties, they're loaded returning there, with still even losing Jair Brown, who I think is going to be end up being a steal for somebody in the NFL draft, because I think he is that good of a player. It's, I don't know. It is a position where I think going into it, everybody nationally looked at it like, hey, man, you add Storm Dunk to this. This just takes a position that is already loaded and takes it even further over the top. So I think you're right. It's it's head scratching in terms of he's just one injury away from being, playing almost every down too, because he could be the number one guy. So yeah, I would like to be a fly on the wall for the conversation there, because I just think he was in a perfect opportunity where, you're going to be fresh when you're out on the field for this Penn State team. So I guess he'll have to start over once again. And, he's so good, though, that wherever he lands, he's going to be playing football at a high level this year.
I mean, he'll be a starter for a Division I school, but I mean, he was also in that secondary, and he has to bear some responsibility with what North Carolina's pass defense was a wet paper bag. That is the dictionary definition of what that looks like. So he, again, second team All ACC, battled some injuries through his career, but I feel like he could have been a serious asset for Penn State's team, because you do look at the secondary, right? And okay, Cam Miller has some promise, but I don't know that I didn't really see a whole lot of him on the football field in the blue-white game. I'm not speculating injury. I just didn't notice him. I saw a lot of Lamont Payne. I saw Elliott Washington. I saw Zion Tracy. And you're going to get some more guys that are coming in later over the summer, and then for fall camp and for summer camp and everything. But this secondary, yes, is one injury away from turning to one of the young guys, a second year or a first year player, and saying, hey,
and you
got a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, you just never know when it comes to a young guy. I mean, and we'll be talking about that all year about Drew Aller is, potential's great, but you got to be able to show it out on the field, and you never know when push comes to shove if the guy's ready or not.
It is Locked On Nittany Lions, your go-to podcast for Penn State rivals. Visit happyvalleyinsider.com for everything Penn State athletics. Again, Locked On Nittany Lions, so proud to be the go-to podcast for Penn State rivals, happyvalleyinsider.com. Before we move further, Matt, let's talk about one of our sponsors for today's show, and then we'll get back into the transfer portal. And today's sponsor is Built. Are you looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar and calories? Then you need to try the best tasting protein bar ever, Built. You got to try this. And if you're like me, where you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise the taste, I've got just the thing for you. It's Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and they taste amazing. Seriously, they're so amazing. You're not going to think they're good for you. You've got to try this. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That is right. Real dark chocolate. And they come in unbelievably tasty flavors: churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy for you. Just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com, which you still can do. Now you can go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club and get your specialty flavors at Built.com. That's right. So head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate bar, or coconut puff. And if you're close to a Sam's Club, run in, grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors like brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank me later. It is a Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. Locked On's NFL mock draft special is here. It's bigger than ever. Follow along all 32 teams' first pick in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience only Locked On can deliver. All episodes are available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. He's Matt Bortner over on the other side. Jimmy Chris transfers out as well. I think I'm not so concerned about the offensive line depth. I was under the impression that Chris was going to be one of the guys in the rotation because, Olu Fashanu, definitely experience. Olu Fashanu, I'm not saying he's going to get hurt again, but just injuries do happen. We saw just especially on the interior what the offensive line dealt with last year in terms of guys that get bumps and bruises, season-ending injuries, a Landon Tangwall, a Nick Dawkins, Hunter Norsad from time to time. Sal Wormley wasn't 100%. And then you factor in Caden Wallace and Olu Fashanu on the outside. So it did make sense if Jimmy Christ had stayed around. But I honestly think that Drew Shelton established himself as tackle number 2 on both sides. That's part of it. And then you also have guys like Alex Birchmeyer, Javen Williams, who probably they had the conversation with Jimmy. Sometimes the coaches will tell you go in the transfer portal because things are going to change pretty quickly and you're not going to like them based on the way you're projecting. They're honest. They will tell you to leave.
Yeah, and I mean, even look at Vega Ione in the blue-white game. He was throwing people around. We've heard Nick Dawkins' name for how long now? It is just the deepest in terms of depth that we've seen Penn State's offensive line since the Bill O'Brien days, when he first took over, and I would say probably even deeper than those. So right now they're in a really good spot. So I think Chris is looking at, wanting to try to earn a starting spot somewhere. And honestly, it's probably a spot for Penn State now too, where, you're fighting for even the second team reps. That's how deep Penn State is at the O-line.
Oh, isn't that something? Yeah. Now, but let's flip it over, right? Okay, because now Penn State has too many offensive linemen, but funny enough, the defensive line, especially in the interior, because I cannot rave enough about the defensive end position, right? You have Adisa Isaac and Chop Robinson, who will be your starters, but Denida Sutton ultimately at the end of the day might get more reps in a game than either of those two guys. Then you factor in Zariah Fisher, who's come a long way since his injury, Amin Vanover, and then you get a guy like Smith Vilbert back who had 3 sacks not too long ago against an Arkansas team in the Outback Bowl. So defensive end is golden, but then you look a little couple gaps in the interior, and Devon Elise, and then Hakeem Beamon. It was Coziah Izzard. Excuse me, Coziah Izzard and Hakeem Beamon were in comfy clothes. They were not playing in the blue-white game. And James Franklin, every time you asked him, even unprovoked, throughout the spring season, was like, "We need defensive linemen. We need defensive linemen. We need defensive tackles." They've been targeting guys since the portal opened up the first time, then it closed again, and now they're doing it again. And they're missing guys like Bear Alexander. I know that if Bear Alexander got the Jordan Addison deal, I get it. USC is going to throw $3 million in cash, a house, a sports car, whatever have you, beachside
everything
view.
I aspire to have.
Yeah, everything that. Yeah, exactly. Everything in our wildest dreams, right? But Penn State continues to miss out on interior defensive linemen because then there's prospects that are at, let's say, for example, the Texas State. And then they ultimately choose to go to Oklahoma over Penn State, when I feel like those are, in terms of assets, provided, are pretty similar. Yeah. So what can we make of all of this? Because if James Franklin's sounding the alarm and saying we need to go get whatever defensive tackle enters the transfer portal, is that concerning to you? Because I would figure that, okay, Beamon and Izzard would come back with plenty of time for the start of West Virginia, the start of the season. But that doesn't seem like it's going to be the case.
Yeah, that, and I just think you look at defensive line in general, especially at Penn State, it's a spot where you rotate so many guys in and out that now honestly looking at, you say, okay, we're 4 deep. That probably isn't enough for a coach to really feel comfortable for depth at that position. So I think it'll be also interesting to see what Manny Diaz does in his second year with his looks. If they're not able to get anybody out of the transfer portal coming into this season that will be able to help out right away. Do we get some three defensive end type looks where, you have one of those guys playing between the guards where, is you have some prowlers on defense to really give some mixed up looks. So I just think in the second year, if you can't get that interior really shored up how you want, I think that's where you also lean on the experience of Manny Diaz and the chaos that Manny Diaz can create with his defensive schemes.
I mean, Penn State wants to naturally run either a 4-3 or a 4-2-5. I totally get. I mean, they introduced the Prowler package, and that became popular all across the NCAA. The 3-2-6, where you have 6 defensive backs out there, and that's just because that was the strength of the defense. I'll tell you what, though, you might have noticed this, or maybe I was crazy, but I saw the white team lining up in a 3-4 defensive formation from time to time. Just a few plays, not too many, but I thought I saw a 3-4 defensive look where the linebackers kind of huddled around for that traditional Baltimore Ravens, that Steelers defense from the mid 2000s that was so key. And you have to get creative.
Why wouldn't you with the personnel you have?
Yeah, with all the linebackers, exactly my point. And then do you get, I don't know, how creative do you get with a guy like Dani Dennis-Sutton? Because I don't want to say that he's positionless, but I feel like he is that athletic enough. You say, all right, Dani, we want you to add on 5 to 10 more pounds over the summer. And then something where you can still be a hybrid, right? Where we can slide you into the B gap and then keep you on the outside, because look, if Beamon, if they continue to miss on guys in the portal and Beamon and Izzard are out for an extended period of time, look, I like Zane Durant a lot. I like Devon Elise a lot. Zane Durant, I think he's going to be the breakout star on defense this year. But Jordan Vandenberg, they show a certain level of confidence in him. Devon Townley was in the portal, then he came back, and it feels like he's only here because he sees an opportunity to get more playing time. There was a reason he was in the portal, right? Yeah. He was exploring other options. So you lose PJ Mustipher. Defensive tackle is down big time.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the defense, it's really the only glaring question mark you have. And we've seen when teams are able to run on Penn State, and maybe that's not always the case that it's the defensive line or the interior's fault. A lot of that has to do with linebackers filling in where they're supposed to. But that seems to be the common theme when Penn State loses football games. It's teams, either eventually wearing them out or gashing them for a big run. So I think it does have to be a concern and something you put a star on in terms of things that need to get better for Penn State in this offseason.
It is a Locked On Nittany Lions. And again, make sure you check out Locked On's NFL mock draft special. It is here. It is bigger than ever. Follow along all 32 teams' first pick in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience. Only Locked On can deliver. All episodes are available now at Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Final segment of Locked On Nittany Lions. He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko, your host. And Penn State also in the transfer portal. They're still looking for a wide receiver. And James Franklin has not been shy about saying that we do not have a third guy. He's alluded to that Dante Cephas is still not on campus. But the fact that they're still offering wide receivers who immediately have jumped in the portal after a lot of other school spring games really, really does say something. Really, I think it does concern me a little bit, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you look just in general, I think there's a lot of guys sitting on that Penn State depth chart where, you go into the season probably 1 or 2 years in a row now where you said, okay, we just need this guy to be a consistent piece. We don't need him to be a breakout star. We just need to have him be a contributor. And there's really not that many guys on Penn State's roster at wide receiver now that you look at and you say, well, first off, we haven't seen him be consistent. Now, how do we see him be a breakout star? Now, when we look at Caden Saunders and Amari Evans, you're not looking too much at that first year because it was their first year true freshman. So I don't think you can really condemn them too much for their play in their first year. Those are the guys that they need to step up, I think, if they're really going to make strides at the wide receiver position. Honestly, I think it has to be those two if they don't find another guy in the transfer portal when you're looking at inside the program right now.
I mean, it's just telling, right? Because I sit back and I say, okay, I feel good about a combination of Dante Cephas, Trey Wallace, and Keandre Lambert-Smith as your three guys. I really do. And then Amari Evans, a Malik Mega, a transfer like Malik McLean. I see those guys as a good second rotation, but I guess if the coaches are doing this right, actions speak louder than words. I'm going to trust them if they say, we got to go get the kid from Colorado. We got to go get the guy from TCU. Really, they're looking up and down, left and right for extra additions. And they're not going after guys that are depth pieces. These are guys that could come in and be wide receiver 1 or 2.
Well, and I think that also says something to, it's not always the coach just saying that because we're not confident in our players. I think it's also a push to those players that say, hey, we need number ones at this point. We know you're fighting for a position to be on the field, but we're trying to push you to be that guy. And I think that's what Penn State's looking for, is that guy. So maybe part of it is, just pushing competition towards being that top dog, being the guy, the breakout star. Obviously, Keandre Lambert-Smith has the ability to be a playmaker. We've seen him. His speed is exceptional. We've seen him be able to burst open those big touchdowns as we saw in the Rose Bowl. But again, it comes down to consistency as well. So it's going to be interesting because when you look at what everybody's talking about, it's, can Drew Allard be, the savior? Can he be the guy that takes Penn State over the top? Well, part of that has to do with having wide receivers that you feel comfortable throwing the ball to and bailing you out when you need to. So I think that goes into as much of Drew Allard's development this year than anything.
Yeah, and he'll have the offensive line that we've raved about and the running game, honestly, that we have. This feels like a laundry list of concerns about Penn State going into the offseason, as opposed to, what do they have to hang their hat on? And that's two Heisman
I think
contenders.
that's a good thing. We're talking about the things right now that they need to clean up to take themselves to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely, because this is a window for a college football playoff. This is a window to win another Big Ten championship, and you don't want to squander it with some of the problems that you already have, because I don't know the conversation that Ohio State and Michigan are having, but they're probably not saying the same things about, like, well, our defensive interior, it needs a little more patching. Like, it needs a lot of patching if you're going to have two starters not be available to start the season, or at least just not be 100%. Matt, let's finish on a positive note, because recruiting has been really good, and Phil Troutwine in particular. They get they've gotten a host of different commits, whether it's been interior offensive line, let's say with a Donovan Harbor, then you go to tackle, and then you get a Garrett Sexton out of Wisconsin as well. Harbor's also from Wisconsin, and then you get one the most recently, and that's Egan Boyer, who's 6'8", out of North Carolina. So it doesn't matter where you are in the country. Trout and Franklin are getting them. I mean, it is a complete 180.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's something to be said that you could make an argument that, offensive line, at least, last year, maybe even look the year before that and going into this year, might be their best position in terms of where they've recruited. I think you'd also look at running back, how well they've done there. But that has always been the question, is why aren't we getting these guys that are making a difference on the offensive line? And now you're looking at, and it's like, man, maybe we need to start going some other places instead of the offensive line. How funny is that?
I think just they've had 3 in the past, week here, literally 7 business days. It feels like they're getting too many at this point, but when it comes to offensive line, too many is not a problem when it comes to that position. And then
Boyer is a big dude too. So I think they look at him maybe more of a project piece in terms of getting that weight up. But in terms of the upward mobility of him, I wouldn't be very concerned about just a 3-star rating there.
Yeah, and with the nutritionist at Penn
Yeah,
State and Chuck
we'll
Losey,
get there.
let's take a Tony Rojas, for example, who put on
Yeah.
30 pounds of healthy weight, if you will. I put on 30 pounds and I get a different I could get a different analysis from
Yeah,
the
I
doctor.
can do that 30+ pounds, but
Oh
we
yeah.
ain't gonna look the same.
No, or move the same. It looks like Tony Rojas got faster with
Yeah.
that 30 pounds. Okay. And then, of course, the NFL draft, depending on when you're watching, listening to this, it is Thursday, April 27th. That is the first round. And then, of course, you have 3 days going into the weekend, the 28th, 29th. I had a full preview with Josh Taylor. Go check that out if you haven't already. Every single individual prospect. But, Matt, I'm just going to kind of get a general take from you to wrap this one up. Most exciting prospect, who you think the biggest steal out of all these players are? For me, it's Jair Brown. I think he's going to have the best career out of everybody. And no slight to Joey Porter Jr. It is no slight, but I think that Jair Brown also could fall into the category of the biggest steal of the draft as well, because look at what Jaquan Brisker did with the Chicago Bears, going in the mid-second round, being defensive rookie of the year, right?
And his last year of college had about the same production level as Daquan Brisker.
So Jair Brown, I think, falls into that category. And then biggest steal, I mean, Mitchell Tinsley has gained a lot of steam as of late. I thought that I felt like he could have been a lot better in Penn State's offense. Things happen. I totally get it. And then position coaches changes, and then you realize, okay, hey, there were some underlying issues here. But Tinsley has had a great Senior Bowl, and then Juice Scruggs as well. And I feel like Juice Scruggs can play anywhere on the line of, guard, center. They're not going to move him to tackle, but you have somebody that's very versatile, and that goes a long way. So who are the Penn State prospects that just a handful of them that stick out the most to you in terms of value from Penn State?
Well, in terms of value, I think you're pretty spot on with Juice Scruggs. He was a guy I was looking at here. And I think also Brenton Strange, just because of his build, his body, his athleticism. We saw him get better and better each year in the Penn State offense. So you wonder how high that ceiling can be. And I think he has an ability that, is starting to be lost in the NFL and in college football with tight ends. And that's the ability to block, be in from first down until third down or goal line situation when you need him. At some points you think he's a better asset to blocking than some of your offensive linemen. That's how good he was this past season for Penn State. So I think he is a guy that wherever he lands, he has a chance to have a long NFL career and can be the steal of the draft. When we're talking about top level, I really like Jair Brown, like you said. I will say, though, I just think, the more physical you can be in the NFL at the corner position with Joey Porter Jr., I think he has a chance to be really good because he's not afraid to lock up with the best wide receivers and get physical. He just doesn't rely totally on his athleticism. He also just doesn't back down from anybody. Actually, a guy that I'm repping my Baltimore Orioles today. I think it would be so great if he landed in Baltimore and make all the Steelers fans upset that Joey Porter Jr. heads to Baltimore. So I really do think Joey Porter Jr. has a chance to be a star in this league.
Yeah, I want him to go to Pittsburgh. I'm a Steelers fan, so he'd definitely be, and he fits in anywhere that does a lot of man coverage. The Patriots, I think Seattle, if Seattle were somehow to move into that 15 to the end of the first round range, because he's not going to go in the top 10, and they're looking to get more of home run guys. And not that Joey Porter isn't, but there are some prospects that are in fact better than him. He's about in that mid to late first round range.
I think he's a lock for the first round though.
Yeah. All that I think that's all smoke and mirrors about. Well, Porter Jr. could fall out. No, he can play day one. But he is a system type of player. He's not going to be. He could learn his own system and be successful in it, but then you got to be willing to commit 3 to 4 years and not be like, hey, why aren't you? Why isn't it clicking for you in year 1, year 2? Matt,
you could have a Penn Stater go first overall. Oh wait, former Penn Stater.
Yeah,
Will Levis.
Will Levis. Oh. I respect Will Levis. I really do. But for him to go be the first quarterback taken, I think is very much a stretch.
I know we had our same thoughts on him before. I get why people were gushing over him, but I don't see it like others do.
No, I don't know. I hope he pans out. I really do.
Hope he proves me wrong. So
yeah. Locked On Nittany Lions, where we give all the best draft analysis and the takes about this Penn State team. Matt, it was great to connect again. Great to talk to you. Great to see you. If you're watching the video version of this, and Matt, just what's ultimately cooking for you now since ESPN Radio State College days are behind us? What's new for you that you want to share?
Yeah, I'm working for Lightner Communications, based out of Altoona now. We have a state college station as well, WRSC. But just staying on the Penn State beat here, doing some reporting of my own. So I'm looking forward to get ramped back up for football season. So if you follow me on Twitter, that you see right there below, I'll be sticking with Penn State coverage and hopefully hop on here a couple more times.
Absolutely. Anytime you want to chat. Again, Locked On Nittany Lions, now your go-to podcast for HappyValleyInsider.com, Penn State rivals, everything you want to see for Penn State athletics. Matt, it was great to talk again, and hopefully we do this very in the near future.
Yep, great to catch up with you as always.